We bring you this special radio television broadcast in order to give you the very latest information on an amazing phenomenon.
From the files of Schlock and Awe, welcome to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature. Here are your hosts, Matty and Dave Wayne.
Don't you dare touch me! Stand back! No! No!
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Natural Selection, the Creature Feature podcast. My name is Dave Wayne, and to my right I have Matty Bedrevich.
Hello.
We have an orgy of films today, a quintet of Stan Winston themed AIP remakes-ish, really. It's not.
This is a strange one, this.
It's a strange one.
Because these films that we're going to talk about today aren't really creature features.
No.
But they fall under the banner name of creature features.
Yeah.
So it's a little strange that we've got to episode 8 and we are only now sort of elaborating on what a creature feature is. But to us, the creature features of the millennium are a very distinctive type of movie in and of themselves.
Yeah.
In that they're about either a giant mutated animal or something naturalistic. But these films that we're looking at today, which are the Stan Winston and Lou Arkoff and Colleen Camp produced creature features, these are what other people might term creature features, in the sense that they're just movies with monsters in them.
Yeah.
But there's no real naturalistic bent to any of these
No.
films.
No.
But they are an interesting footnote in the Millennium creature feature cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the films themselves are She Creature, How to Make a Monster, Earth vs. the Spider, Teenage Caveman, and The Day the World Ended. So they're a bizarre group of films that, their roots lie back in the 1950s with Sam Arkoff, who was a legendary B-movie producer who made a whole
slew of drive-in movies of this ilk. This series, the creature feature series, they were broadcast on Cinemax and HBO.
Yeah.
And so they're TV movies. They have their history in another sort of made-for-cable run of movies. So, just to give a little bit of history on this, back in 1994, Samuel Z. Arkoff's son, Lou Arkoff, had teamed with Halloween's producer, Deborah Hill, to make a series of films called Rebel Highway for Showtime. Rebel Highway was basically like an update of Arkoff Sr.'s classic drive-in movies, and the whole idea was to give them a sort of 90s twist. So you had reimaginings of all these classic 50s Arkoff B pictures, like Road Racers, which was directed by Robert Rodriguez, who replaced Wes Craven, who had left the project to make New Nightmare. Motorcycle Gang by John Milius, Runaway Daughter by Joe Dante, Drag Strip Girl by Mary Lambert, and a bunch of others.
Yeah.
So the Rebel Highway series, the goal was for Lou Arkoff. This is going to get very confusing constantly saying Arkoff. Lou Arkoff and Deborah Hill, they gave all the directors complete creative control to reimagine these movies how they saw fit. And they'd give them final cut just as long as that they came in on budget and on schedule. So they were all made for $1.3 million and they all had to be shot in 12 days.
Yeah.
So Rebel Highway, movies played July, August, September 1994 on Showtime. And, did okay, pulled in some decent ratings and stuff. Yeah. And Arkoff, Lou Arkoff that is, he wanted to do more AIP remakes.
Yeah.
Only this time he wanted to do the horror stuff. So around the turn of the millennium, about February 2000, Arkoff conceptualised creature features. And he signed a pre-buy deal in February 2000 with HBO, who they were going to bankroll these movies, and they were going to play on HBO and Cinemax sometime in 2001.
Yeah.
Like Rebel Highway, it was a very, very simple ethos. They wanted to update several titles from Samuel Z. Arkoff's AIP catalogue and give them a modern twist.
Yeah.
And make them about the fears of the new millennium. Into the mix, Stan Winston got on board to design the creatures and just conceptualise the effects work and things like that, as well as helping to give the series a sort of multimedia twist.
Yeah.
So while these films were released, they were bringing out toys, an interactive website, and it was just this whole cross-platform bit of entertainment built around the idea of creature features. They also got Colleen Camp on board as another producer, and she would help out with casting and working with actors and things like that. Now, initially, the creature features were built around, they were going to get established talent in to make these wild and wacky reimaginings.
Yeah.
However, Winston, Arkoff and Camp decided that they wanted to go a more indie route and get sort of off the beaten track indie filmmakers. So you end up with this wild slate of crazy reimaginings of Arkoff titles directed by a whole manner of people who, it's jaw-dropping, the sort of slate that they've got. In broadcast order, the films that were eventually made were She Creature, How to Make a Monster, Earth vs. the Spider, Teenage Caveman, and The Day the World Ended. And yeah, they all run the gamut in quality, and despite their branding, as I've said, none of them are quite representative of the modern creature feature standard of wildlife going nuts. But they are an interesting little footnote in straight-to-TV straight-to-video filmmaking, especially as the films deserve a damn sight better than to be languishing in the direct-to-DVD and video obscurity that they're currently in.
You're listening to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature.
Columbia TriStar Home Entertainment, Lou Arkoff, Colleen Camp, and Stan Winston, Academy Award-winning special effects artist for Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, and Aliens, present Creature Features.
All over the world, there are tales of mysterious sea creatures possessing magical powers with unparalleled beauty. They are just stories. Everyone knows they aren't real.
Show's over.
Can we offer you a ride home, sir?
I came to your show tonight because I wanted to warn you of the danger.
Everyone, until now.
She has powers the others don't. She murdered my wife.
A real-life bleeding mermaid.
You'd love to show her as a freak.
This is our ticket, Lily.
All hands prepare to get underway!
A bad feeling about this.
That beast doesn't belong here.
You caught me by surprise.
I hope I didn't scare you.
Lily and her husband Angus are about to discover
He's dead. She can read my thoughts, and she did this for me.
that what lies behind the legend
What is it you want from me?
is the most unthinkable truth.
It's not the mermaid, it's something else.
Rufus Sewell, Carla Gugino, Gil Bellows. She Creature.
Okay, that was the trailer for She Creature there, the first film to air as part of this Stan Winston experiment. Also called The Mermaid Chronicles. It was directed by Sebastian Gutierrez, a director who hails from Venezuela. Began his career with a film called Judas Kiss, although he probably achieved notoriety as a screenwriter in terms of films like Gothica, The Big Bounce, Snakes on a Plane, Rise, and The Eye. She Creature's a good place to begin, really, isn't it?
Almost deceptively so, because it sets a very, very high benchmark for the rest of the series, which, while the other movies in the lineup don't quite get there, they're still very, very interesting, and they're still very, very cool, and they're still well worth seeking out.
Yeah, I mean, the original She Creature dates back to 1956. Edward L. Kahn directed that one, and perhaps most memorably, it was a film to which Peter Lorre fired his agent, and he was so appalled by the original script. The original isn't a great film, is it? Really?
No,
it's not the best.
It's painful.
Yeah, but this new reimagining, shall we say, is quite remarkable. Really, I mean.
On the subject of the reimagining, though, it's again this sets the standard in the sense that it's a very, very loose reimagining, because She Creature, the 2001 one, it actually began under the title of another AIP film, War of the Colossal Beast. It was actually going to be a loose remake of that until they decided that She Creature, with its emphasis on like an aquatic monster, was much more fitting.
Yeah, it's a period piece, isn't it? It's set in 1905, where we find two carnies. Angus, played by Rufus Sewell, and Lily, played by Cara Gugino, who... Well, they abduct a mermaid, in simplest terms, and decide to transport her back to America. But it's just so lush, isn't it? Really, I mean, we do like a carny-themed movie, don't we? Be it films like Luther the Geek, or maybe Malatesta's Carnival of Blood, or more classically, Carnival of Souls, of course.
Yeah, it's got the great carny hook to it.
It does.
Really, this film is... It's a period version of Alien. Instead of a spaceship, you've got an actual seafaring vessel going from England to America, and instead of a xenomorph, you've got some sort of demonic mermaid creature.
I thought, Gutierrez in interviews has always stated how he's a big admirer of film noir. He loves the pulpiness, which you can perhaps see in films like Rise, for example. It's got that pulpy, noirish nature. And I think this has, to a lesser extent, in that you can almost imagine it in pictorial form, in like one of those tatty carousels you find in the gateway to bookshops, just dog-eared, and you pick it up and it's kind of like a full-colour, glossy...
There's a pulp sort of literary quality, like like an old penny dreadful.
Yeah.
I don't want to. At the minute, it's a very trendy thing to say, but there's a definite like Lovecraftian vibe to it. Yeah, my personal feelings towards the whole Lovecraft thing at the minute, it's quickly becoming another overused horror Twitter and horror clique buzzword. However, the good thing is that if people are looking for Lovecraft-esque horror tales, maybe not so much the cosmic-y ones like The Colour Out of Space, but the sort of wetter, gloomy, and as you say, pulpy ones, like The Shadow over Innsmouth and Dagon or Lurking Fear, She Creature very much fits in that bracket.
Yeah, and it sort of sets that stall out early on, doesn't it, with the introduction of Mr. Woolrich, who I think is a brilliant character and really sets the tone of the film. It's a role that was offered to Christopher Lee, was it, originally?
Yeah.
And I think that whole sequence with him and with that kind of spiel about the mermaid that he has in his house, the one that Angus and Lily decide to kidnap, I just thought that really gave it a very... almost not Hammer-esque, but Lovecraftian feel.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Hammer allusions are very much there. I mean, the character's played by Aubrey Morris, who of course popped up in, I think it was Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, the Hammer, probably more famously known for A Clockwork Orange, Wicker Man, Life Force. He's this quirky, disgruntled sort of sea captain who, he's seen things out on the ocean. But yeah, and he lives in this wonderful gothic mansion, and the whole film's got, even once they get on board the ship, they've got this wonderful look to all the sets. It's very set bound, very, very stylish. This luxurious comic book aesthetic.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Once you get past the first reel, we're on that ship for the duration of the film. I mean, yes, it's claustrophobic, but you never get stir-crazy in regard to the surroundings. The surroundings really suit the film, and they really lend, to just look really beautiful. And that's one of the things that surprised me, because when the opening credits start up and you see the name Tom Calloway, He's not someone you really associate with gorgeous cinematography.
Yeah. He is brilliant, but he's a workhorse. He's a journeyman cinematographer. But the film, the actual whole conceit of She Creature, it's about aesthetic beauty.
Yeah.
It's about the perceived nature of what is beautiful, and it's completely centralised by the mermaid herself, who's played by Raya Kilstead.
Yeah,
I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, and she's this appropriately alluring, sort of a cross between Syl from Species and the Fish People from Stuart Gordon's Dagon.
That's right.
But very, very sexualised. There's a real erotic streak to the film, which which sort of. That's not a Lovecraftian thing. His work wasn't particularly sexual, but it is there in this movie. And it's about that. It's about visuals. It's about aesthetic. It's about tone and mood.
Yeah. I mean, that mood is very much a feminist one as well, isn't it? It's very much a feminist story. Because Lily ends up being quite a prominent character, especially in her relationship with the mermaid. So it's very much based around how those two interact and how Lily is... Oh, she's on a ship full of men. And she got so many of the same parallels with the mermaid, and that it's quite a symbiotic relationship, isn't it?
And of course, once the mermaid starts getting inside Lily's head, with it being schlock horror territory, it, of course, the most obvious way to show that is that Lily suddenly develops this appetite for quite rough sex, which is the best way to visualise these to bring the idea of some outside external forces messing with my mind, so I think I'm going to have a kinky fuck. That's it. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a film that sort of, there's so many different influences about the film, so many films you can pinpoint around it, and so it relates to and bears an influence from so many pictures. I mean, to me, there was a real sort of Val Lewton quality to the film. Go back to the 40s with Cat People, maybe a little bit of Ghost Ship as well. But there's one film in which it does have a very close relationship to, which I think is Night Tide. In the Night Tide, you've got a sailor falling in love with a carny performer in the Dennis Hopper / Curtis Harrington film. And here, although it's not exactly a sailor falling in love with a carny performer, it is in that same world and with the same kind of feel. And you do find the two mentioned a great deal together. For example, in the book Icons of Horror and the Supernatural by S.T. Joshi, he cites that given the enduring popularity of The Little Mermaid, for example, it's very rare for this creature to be depicted in anything but a very Disney type of way. But both Night Tide and She Creature are distinctive efforts in that sinister vein. So.
I mean, the whole film is designed around, as a showcase for Stan Winston's special effects. And the actual mermaid, when she transforms from the beautiful topless fish lady into this hideous, wet, snarling monster, she's got it's a classic rubbery monster kind of look to it. I love it. It's really, really icky. A bit of the Alien Queen, bit of Predator, just a quality looking Winston creation, and one that obviously fits within the mould of like Winston's stuff. You can tell that it's from the same guy who's done Jurassic Park. You can tell it's the same guy behind Predator, etc. And yet they're unafraid to make the mermaid horrifying. And you've got this wonderful bit at the end where there isn't just that mermaid. There's a whole swarm of them, and the whole thing is this ship is being drawn by some weird cosmic-y force, I guess, into going to the island. And of course, then you see on the side of the ship's called the Mary Celeste. So, it's a nice bit of mythology and playing with sort of legendary tropes and stuff, even though that date-wise the actual film is set like 33 years after the actual Mary Celeste disappeared. But I love the fact that Gutter is he tries to tie it in with that.
Yeah, I mean, in relation to the creature, obviously it looks phenomenal, but I do find the 5 films following a very similar template in regard to when the creature appears. The creatures are very much relegated to that final last 10-15 minutes, which is fine, but I think here it probably suits it more than the others.
This is where it works. With that, obviously, it's a symptom of AIP themselves. That's just how the quote unquote AIP classics. That's how they presented themselves. You'd be teased all the way through and then given the monster just before the closing credits. But yeah, She Creature works. It's at a very, very high benchmark, as we've said, for the rest of the series, and it is probably the best film in terms of technical quality and just sort of conventional atmospheric horror-making techniques.
You're listening to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature.
At Clayton Software, a new team of experts has been assembled to complete the most frightening video game ever.
Evolution. Kill or be killed.
This game is going to help you think. It's going to learn as you play. No game will ever be the same.
Yeah, and your AI engine is going to give Evolution a brain.
No, better. It'll give the game personality.
So where's my mark?
Anywhere you'd like. The remotes in the suit are fully charged.
Now, their ultimate deadline.
Come on, what's going on here?
Is about to get deadly.
Ready to die?
There's nowhere to run.
So the computer's controlling the suit.
No place to hide.
And the computer's playing the game.
Our game. Evolution. Kill or be killed, or death is the only escape.
When the game
Where's your monster now?
knows your every move.
It's getting smarter.
Or it can't do that. It's just a game.
No, it's not. It's everything.
How do you kill something that isn't alive? Clea Duvall, Julie Strain. How to Make a Monster.
Trailer for the second film in this quintet there, and that was How to Make a Monster, directed by George Huang, who is I really like two of his films from the 90s. They're like two of my all-timers. I know I'm not doing much for my credibility, but I really like Swimming with Sharks with Kevin Spacey.
Don't say Spacey. A few episodes ago you dropped Victor Salva and now you're dropping Spacey.
I'm going to drop Spacey in.
Man.
But yeah, Spacey, one of his best roles. And also Trojan War, which is amazing. You ever seen Trojan War?
Never seen it.
Brilliant. Just a whole film about the quest to find a condom.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's hilarious. Honestly, you should check it out. Anyway, How to Make a Monster. Thoughts?
I love this film. This is it's not the best. It's not the conventionally the best, but it's probably my tied favourite in the series, just purely because I'm hooked in from the outset with How to Make a Monster. It starts with some sort of weird fetishistic robo-mechanical suit as the credits roll, and aesthetically I just love shit like that. I'm a big fan of like mech fetish stuff. You know, things like that really appeal to me for some reason, like Return of the Living Dead 3, Death Machine. I think I just like that whole militaristic Tetsuo body horror kind of thing. And as well as that, as the credits are going, you've got this march-like score by David Reynolds, who of course also did the music for She Creature and the next film in the series, First for Spider. But it's just got such a great look to it that pulls me in from the minute the credits roll. Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, you're not a gamer. No. I'm not a gamer, aside from maybe the occasional Larry Fessenden game. You know, we're not part of that world. And I think that makes a big difference in how we feel about this film. Yeah. Because much of the hate and disdain about this movie is from gamers who just rip it to shreds in regard to every aspect about it. Which is, it's fair enough. It's a film, people, because, well, the whole film itself revolves around a game, doesn't it? The CEO of Clayton Software is played by Colleen Camp. Faye Clayton. She lays off her development team, doesn't she? After their latest game, Evolution, received disastrous previews. Hires replacements, gives them 1 month to make a new game, with the bonus the scariest game imaginable.
The scariest game
imaginable. That's very brief.
Sorry, yeah. And with a bonus of $1 million to those who make the game the most scariest. Yeah, that's it. So it literally is that simple. So you got the four guys. There's 4 guys. You got Hardcore, you got Bug, you got Sol. 3 guys, and you got Clea Duval.
Yeah, who had quite the horror chops at the time.
She did, didn't she?
You know, you got The Faculty, The Astronaut's Wife, Ghosts of Mars, Identity, The Grudge, all of which she made.
But where did she begin her career? In one of the best DTV horror pictures of the 90s.
What?
Little Witches.
Do you know what? I've never seen Little
Haven't
Witches.
you seen
I've
that?
never seen it.
Oh, good lord. 18 years old she was. Didn't know what she was doing. Had no clue what she was walking into.
Is that The Craft sort of rip-off of The Craft?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It's very memorable. I'm going to have to buy one of those. But yeah, so she's great. She's really great. She's unconventionally attractive as well, isn't she? She really is sort of quite...
Yeah, she's got the girl next door
very much
type
so,
quality
yeah.
to her. You know, and you can imagine her in this world of like hardcore tech geeks.
Yeah, but it's her path in the film that's probably the most intriguing. Even though she's very much a background character for the majority of the film, her path is pretty insane, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole arc where she goes from nice, affable. She wants to design websites and stuff like that. To by the end of it, she's just a stone cold bitch.
Yeah.
But of course, in the interim, she's had to fight off this weird biomechanical monster that's come to life from the game that they're developing.
Yeah.
And it's ended up locking down the compound that they're working in. And is just picking off the game designers one by one.
It is pretty goofy.
Oh yeah, without doubt.
Schlocky, overused word in our vocabulary, but that's what it is.
It's a comic book movie. It's a big cartoon. You know, it's colourful production design.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about a comic book movie next, but this is the better type of comic book movie.
The better of the two of them. Yeah,
because it's more comic booky at its core, more organically.
Yeah, it's not shoehorned in.
Exactly.
Like Earth vs. the Spider, as we'll get to, is it's very forced comic booky. Whereas this is just its whole vibe. You know, it's got that sort of EC ghoulishness to it. And it's just a colourful, bright, well shot, lively, gory. It's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back across the years, there's not really been that many video game themed genre movies, would you say? I'm thinking about things like Arcade, for example, with Charlie Bandit, Brain Scan, for example, Stay Alive in the noughties, Existence to some degree from Cronenberg. But it's never really been a field in which there's been a perpetual... I mean, think of the gaming industry and how massive that is. Wouldn't you think that would be echoed in the film business? But do you think maybe owing to the rapidly changing nature of the technology, do you think that this can't be a subject or a field that can be echoed in film because it's there forever, and you look back in 10, 20 years and you think, that's dated.
Well, I've got a theory with stuff like that nothing dates a horror movie or a thriller more than a VR plot or setting. You know, virtual reality is... If you want time to be kind to your movie, you do not go with VR or computer games, because what might be cutting edge now, you know, look at The Lawnmower Man. Wow, that's amazing in 1992. Fast forward to 2020, and you know, they're kind of doodles on an Etch-a-Sketch, and it is really, really exhausting trying to watch it and let your eyes focus to this stuff. The weak spot of How to Make a Monster is the CGI, and as someone who goes out of my way to defend bad CGI, it does kill me to say that, but I would say it's what I'd term deliciously naff. You know, it looks like they've stepped into a really bad 1995 version of Doom.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that sort of pixelated quality and stuff to it, and thankfully, it's few and far between, because the real meat of the story is when you have this weird biomechanical zombie that's getting pieced together from all the body parts of the hacked-up crew, the game designing crew, sorry. You know, it looks like something that's been kicked off the set of Virus. It's got that sort of vibe to it.
But in relation to what you said at the top of the programme, I mean, they did have a spin-off of this film, didn't they? They had a game called Evolution, The Legend of Helnar, created by John Hegeman. It was a heart-stopping, web-based, interactive 3D game where a player must defend his life against evil creatures. I can't find any trace of it.
I imagine it's massively out of print and deeply, deeply expensive. I
so.
Also, based upon playing on a time where I would have considered myself a gamer, in like the turn of a millennium, stuff like that always used to confuse the living hell out of me. The controls were so complicated. But I'd like to think that it would be focused around the actual monster at the core of it, because it's just a brilliant, brilliant bit of practical effects. It was designed by Jason Matthews and Mark Crash McCreary and Aaron Sims and Shane Mahan. And just brilliant practical effects. Gross, weird, this fusion of flesh and the mechanical. What I love about How to Make a Monster is it makes me rewind it, just because it's such a joy to look at this horrible creature.
Yeah.
It's the type of stuff, I put a tweet out after I'd watched it saying that you should always measure a monster movie, whether the actual monster's cool or not, is if it would make 10-year-old you want to draw it in the back of like your school exercise book.
Yeah.
And this was just the coolest thing to me. I just loved it, and it helped that there was some great squirty blood effects in there that you can just tell Hwang was having a whale of a time with the material.
Yeah, as they set out to do, I mean, it was one of their remits for the whole series, was to reflect the fears of today. And well, for example, a she creature might not have come across in that manner. It might have just been a general sort of mythical fairy tale. How to Make a Monster does tackle that quite head on, doesn't it? In terms of with it being a morality tale about greed and corruption. We mentioned upon Claire Duvall's character before, but the path that she takes, it is a metaphor for, greed and hunger for money and profitability and stepping on anybody in the quest to get rich.
Yeah, that's the thing, because as much as the effects, the VR effects sort of date it, there is this weird timelessness in that as a theme, and there's a character who pops up called Jeremy, who's like, I believe it's the ex-boyfriend of Clea Duvall's character, and he's just, it's a blink and you'll miss him cameo from that guy from That 70s Show, Danny Masterson. And he plays this really sexist, horrible, misogynistic, abusive kind of guy, which now, of course, is quite frightening, as Masterson has quite famously been accused of rape. And he's probably better known as being a serial rapist now. A vile piece of shit by all accounts. Scientologist, and apparently they're very, very defensive of him and go to great lengths to protect him, like harassing his accusers, apparently killing their pets and things like that. It's just all manner of crazy stuff. I don't want to get too woke or anything, and I don't want to say too much about it in case the Church of Scientology start coming after us. But seeing him in that role, it just adds an extra level of admittedly accidental resonance. But it does help to sort of frame How to Make a Monster around the current #MeToo topic of conversation, in terms of how women, the environment in which women have to work when they're surrounded by these arsehole men. And I think that whole aspect of it is just as fascinating as the pulpy, schlocky comic book sensibility of the movie. Yeah,
without doubt. And just a quick word also on the original from 1958. Of all the 5 original AIP movies, perhaps this is one of the 2 that deserves a revisit. I mean, you got Robert H. Harris playing Pete Dumont, an eccentric makeup artist with a 25-year career who gets laid off, so he decides to exact his revenge by hypnotizing a teenage Frankenstein and a teenage werewolf to exact their revenge on the studio. And it's wonderful, wonderful stuff that is incredibly pricey in the second-hand market, but you might be able to dig it out on YouTube or somewhere.
You're listening to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature.
For Quentin Kemmer, being normal gets him nowhere.
Hang on, I'll walk you down. She's out of my league.
You're a good security cop at an important research lab.
Oh, Larry must have something
that makes him invincible.
I wish I could do some of this stuff.
Spiders like their prey alive and kick it.
Being nice is no good.
You guys just back off.
Or what?
I'll call the cops.
You don't have that stick up for me.
And being good isn't good enough.
Let the real cops handle this, all right? My partner's in there. No. What do you expect? Heroes for $5 an hour?
All he needed was a shot in the arm.
Something very cool is happening to me.
Did you see the front page today? That Midtown creep?
Looks like someone took care of the Midtown for you.
I think I have superhero powers.
You're scaring me now.
Hungry! Still hungry!
Now, a cop with a past.
You gotta be careful here. They're about to pull you off this case.
Must uncover the secret behind the killer.
What exactly do you do here?
You ever see what a spider can do?
What the hell are you?
That's half man.
Any data yet on what would happen if you introduced this spider material into a human organism?
And all terror. Dan Aykroyd, Earth versus the Spider.
That was the trailer for Earth versus the Spider, or Dan Aykroyd versus the Spider, which is what it really should be known as, to be honest. A remake of Burt I. Gordon's film from 1958.
Meh.
See, I'm going to start off again by talking about the director, Scott Zeal, who again, like Judge Huang, made one of my favourite 90s DTV films, which is Broken Vessels, which I think is on par with Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. They're both ambulance-based, paramedic-based movies, and it really does demand people checking it out. So yeah, big fan of Scott Zeal, but yeah, for both of us, this didn't really do much, did it?
No, it's the third film in the run, and I think that the first one was so good and set such a high benchmark that I can imagine people being a little shocked seeing How to Make a Monster and how different it was if they were going in expecting quite serious horror movies. And Earth vs. the Spider is in many ways more of the same of How to Make a Monster, but it's nowhere near as good. The comic book sort of setup and framing of it is I found it quite obnoxious.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know we're not the biggest comic book fans in the whole comic book movie fans in the whole world, but I just didn't. I mean, this was pre-Spider-Man as well, pre-Sam Raimi Spider-Man, so it was very much outside what we know today as the typical comic book sort of market for films. You know, this was an era which comic book films just didn't get made. But it just, I don't. For one, I'm not a fan of Devin Gummersaw because I think he really does have a charisma bypass in this film, and that he doesn't have any kind of real eye-catching thing about him. There's blandness.
Other than the fact he's a security guard who's obsessed with comics. One in particular, the Arachnid Avenger, which I can only presume is the non-copyright infringing version of Spider-Man. There's nothing to him, and the performance is really quite snivelling and just quite unlikable and whiny.
Yeah, and it's just a shoehorn comic book references. You know, his dog is called Thor. The comic book guy is your typical comic book guy, played by John Cho, who went on to Harold and Kumar fame. Yeah, it's just the whole setup and delivery, and aside from a final sequence or final couple of sequences with Stan Winston's creation, I think it's a very sort of a lot happens in this film, but it's very boring.
If I hadn't wrote it down, I couldn't tell you the sequence of events. It just sort of trundles along from one thing to the next. I guess it's ostensibly a superhero origin story in that Gummersaw's character, he's unable to prevent a robbery that's taken place at this lab that he's working at that happens to be conducting these experiments on super spiders. And so he can't stop this robbery. His old veteran partner gets killed, and Gummersaw, who's sick and tired of being tread on and put down all his life by his neighbours, some awful punks who live outside his flat, and his workmates, that he gets injected by one of the machines that is extracting the sort of super spider serum from these tarantulas. And so then he starts on the whole fly type transformation as he becomes. First, he thinks he's getting superhero powers, but then ultimately we head towards Cronenberg territory. In his body, he's just becoming a giant spider. Yeah, it's even the effects for me of it's typical that. This is the film that got the Fangoria cover story. Yeah. Fangoria issue 207 had a whole thing on Stan Winston and Arkoff's and Camp's creature features. And Earth vs. the Spider is the one who got the cover. But it's just kind of... it's not on screen enough. It's kind of awkward to look at. Considering it's the film's big hook, it's just... The pincers around the mouth are just kind of clunky. And it just... Gummersall just doesn't seem, at least, to be able to emote or act under the makeup either. It's literally he's just wearing an exotic Halloween costume.
It's just strange because I don't think he's a bad actor. I mean, he was in Recall, wasn't he, about a year later or something? And I think he was great in that. And there are aspects of the film in which you can happily nod away, in relative satisfaction at. For example, Amelia Heinle as his Mary Jane. She's good, and also reminded me that she was lead in a great film called Black Cat Run that I haven't seen in ages, which was directed by DJ Caruso and written by Frank Darabont, which really does deserve checking out. Aykroyd is...
It's one of them, it's Richard Roundtree pops up as well. Teresa Russell pops up, and it's just...
But
why?
The thing that
why?
I mean, I can understand Aykroyd being in the film because he's a massive police nut. He, it's a true story. He owns and rides a police motorcycle.
Right.
Yeah. He collects police badges. He has been known to ride shotgun with detectives in squad cars.
Good Lord.
Yeah. And his grandpa was a Mountie. So he has a really big fetish for police-orientated stuff, and he very rarely plays policeman. The last policeman I saw him play was in Exeter Eden, which I've seen more times than I care to admit.
Well, here was me thinking Aykroyd just endlessly touts Ghostbusters 3. I had no idea he had so many other strings to his bow. Of course, that's me just being glib. He is a comedy icon.
So yeah, there's that aspect to it. But yeah, you mentioned about Cronenberg before. It really is... Do you think it's more comic book than Cronenberg, or more Cronenberg than comic book? Or does it not really know? Is it a case of identity crisis?
It's neither fish nor fowl. I can't think of anything to describe this movie other than a string of idioms.
Yeah.
In that it's just kind of there. I wasn't bored rigid, but I found my mind wandering, and I found it difficult to... I just didn't care.
No.
There was no. I didn't like any of the characters. I thought the style was intrusive and quite repellent. And the soul, like I said, the soul thing, I thought at least the effects could save it, but no. I think there's part of me that wonders if Earth vs. the Spider was a bit of a vanity vehicle.
Right.
The story was conceptualised by one of the concept designers of the creature.
Oh, right, okay.
Who worked on the rest of the series, the aforementioned Mark Crash McCreary.
Yeah.
He came up with the story of it, and I just think that there's just not enough there. I don't even think it would have worked as a 20-minute Tales from the Crypt episode or anything like that. I just think it just treads water before ultimately drowning.
Yeah, I mean, I read a piece from Mitch Lavelle in Video Vacuum, who I quite like, to be honest, but he called it the best of the AIP remakes, which...
absolutely not.
No, it's absolutely not. Should people check it out regardless of what we say?
As a completist, yeah, I think that it would. If you're wanting to watch all of them, you need to see it. But if you're just wanting to cherry pick the best ones, this is the one to. This is the bottom of the pile.
You're listening to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature.
When civilization is gone.
Did you catch something? Haven't had meat in months.
And ignorance rules society.
This is the old world, and it's gone.
A group of rebellious teens go in search of a better life.
It's a city. That's where we're going.
Now.
I'm Neil, and this is Judith. What is this place?
It used to be a biotech research complex. Now it's our home.
they will come face to face with the past and discover a modern lifestyle that offers every freedom.
We have a whole world to show you.
Fulfills any fantasy.
Sex with her is like nothing else in the world.
But will destroy everything.
You shouldn't wander around alone.
In its path.
They tricked me somehow. They can make you see things. They're trying to turn us into people like them. Stop! I had sex with them. I'm gonna die. You're hurting me. You're hurting me.
Humanity's day is done, David. You'll find out yourself.
From director Larry Clark, Andrew Keegan, Tara Subkoff.
Whatever's in him is in me too.
Teenage Caveman.
That was Teenage Caveman. Where do we begin with Teenage Caveman?
I love this one. I think it's brilliant. I am a big fan of its director, Larry Clark.
I was worried about what you were going to say.
No, I think this is such a wild and crazy reconciliation of Clark's directorial obsessions with schlocky material, and to see them fused together on screen is really quite spectacular.
But if it didn't have the Misfits track, would you still feel the same?
That helps, I'm not going to lie. Having Where Eagles Dare blaring is one of the film's many highlights.
That's one of the highlights of the film. Yeah. I mean, just to explain to everyone, that is the scene in which the unique and late, sadly, Richard Hillman appears on screen for the very first time. Why is he there? Well, he's there because he has 6 visitors to his
post-apocalyptic penthouse.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, let's start at the beginning, because you got our lead guy, David, played by Andrew Keegan, has got a bit of a twatty dad, played by Paul Hipp. It was a staple of Abel Ferrara's films. Played Jesus in Bad Lieutenant.
Yeah. Also Dan O'Dare in Bad Channels, the Full Moon film. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and his dad makes an advance on his girlfriend, which is pretty unsavoury. So he finds himself, because he attacked his father in the act of, about to rape his girlfriend. He then finds himself strung up on a cross, like Jesus,
and cast out from this prehistoric tribe, who we have quickly learned aren't actually prehistoric. No. There's a wonderful gag at the beginning where there's a Larry Clark cameo. He ends up getting speared, and it turns out that what we think is 1 million years BC or whatever. We soon see a dilapidated no skateboarding sign, and this is actually some post-apocalyptic future.
Yeah. So poor old David has been strung up for attacking his father, but luckily he has his crew of kids to sort of, no pun intended, to break him free, and they decide to escape from this prehistoric village and head into the city, which we soon learn is Seattle.
The centre of grunge.
Indeed. And where they become overcome and sort of...
Yeah, they end up falling into this weird... I guess they want it to be like a de facto family unit, but it's all kinds of depraved and weird. Of Neil, who's played by Richard Hillman, and Judith, who is played by Tiffany Lemos. And these are two... I don't even know how to they're sort of government experiments that have somehow survived all this post-apocalyptic stuff and are now living the high life in this plush apartment that's built above a research facility.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of like an ice storm or acid storm, whatever it is, these kids, they black out and they wake up to the blaring sounds of the Misfits in Neil and Judith's plush apartment. Which they explain as it used to be a biotech research complex, but now it's our home.
And now, well, they learn about what modern life is about, I guess. Or, well, according to Neil and Judith, because the first thing they do is obviously decide to have a bath together, then they have an orgy, and then kind of all sinister goings on begin to happen.
And the film is, in many ways, a dumpster fire, because there's no sort of long... It's not a plot-based film at all. It's just like
it's experience-driven, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
it's just this sensory nightmare. There's a lot to dig into with it, though.
No, there is.
You know, I mean, from the outset, you've got there's digs at religion, you know, and it's heavy-handed. But I do like movies that deal with the sort of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Of religion. It's a topic that I'm personally very interested in from my own personal thoughts on the matter about, you know, how like the most devout always seem to be the most perverted and have the darkest desires. But yeah, I also like it as a device within post-apocalyptic movies. I like the way that religion is often the only thing that characters can seem to latch onto as the world around them, I guess, what goes to hell. And of course, Clark has loads of cheeky digs at religion throughout the narrative and at the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah.
You know, by having David kill his father, which is a very biblical concept.
Very much so, yeah.
But he stabs him in the eye with a crucifix, which is just a nice ironic touch. And then there's obviously the whole typical Clark concept of youth culture.
I read an interview with Clark where he said that She Creature was his first choice. And then he went on to say how, you know, obviously the AIP films, as we stated before, represented the fears of the 50s. So the idea for Teenage Caveman was very much to reflect the fears of today, being ecological, AIDS, HIV, sex, and disease. But he set out to make it in very much an anti-TV way. So by that, he sort of meant, you know, whatever TV does to sort of polish things and make it nice and crisp and clean and homogenized, he set out to, you know, mix it up a bit. He said he didn't want that. He really wanted to just make it, you know, sort of the opposite to what TV represents. And I think he did that. Yeah,
I mean, he summed it up as the stepchild of the series. You know, there's a wonderful quote from him where he says that that's the thing I learned. If you get involved with a series of movies, don't get stuck being the last one, because whatever goes over budget on the first film comes out of yours.
Yeah.
So I think that part of that ever the provocateur, he uses an excuse to, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
And, you know, so he makes it very anti-TV. It is very, very raw, very youthful. But to me, you can tell that Clark, as a filmmaker, is excited and fascinated by rawness and by a young person's perception and point of view of the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, and for as over the top and lurid and as sensationalistic Clark's work seems, there is an honesty, I think, to his stuff. He's unafraid to show young people drinking, partying, taking drugs, sexually experimenting. I think it's powerful, and you know, it sounds over the top, but almost life affirming being exposed to that, exposed to Clark's work as a teenager. And to me, like the best horror, Teenage Caveman is a safe way to confront your apprehensions of growing up. You know, of the controversy within Clark's filmography, and which he piles on in Teenage Caveman, because if you can't be controversial in a horror movie, when can you be?
Yeah.
You know, that's just a way to address it and to grab you by the throat and make you watch it.
Yeah, obviously it's been criticised, as most of Larry Clark's films have been criticised for, you know, the depiction of that kind of, you know, adolescent, teenage kind of character. But I, you know, it's just something that I can acknowledge the fact that, you know, he does have a lingering eye, but I wouldn't say it's. I wouldn't say it's seedy. I don't feel dirty after watching a Larry Clark film.
It's, you know, his direction's unflinching. I think that's the word I would use to describe it. You know, I think Teenage Caveman would play very, very well with something like George Romero's Martin. And, you know, in the last sort of decade or so, you can see traces of Teenage Caveman in stuff like Dead Girl and I'm Not a Serial Killer.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people seem to have a big problem with the teen orgy in the film, as if he was actually using real underage kids in it. And so,
that's the thing. I mean, you Andrew Keegan's 23, Tara Subkoff's 30, Richard Tolman's 28, Tiffany Lameau 22. Stephen Jasso is the only teenager, and he's 19. So you're talking about yes, the teenage character aspect is is mentioned, but they're not.
But it's not. I remember I had a problem reading Alan Jones. He said that it was basically a teenage sex film or something like that in his Radio Times review of it.
Really?
But that the orgy where they're high, they're drunk, everyone's just fucking everyone. It's not sexy, like you say. It's not a titillating sequence, and I love that.
And it's quite realistic, for those of you who've had orgies, because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed. They're awkward. The kids he's employing in the film are fairly, they're not inexperienced actors. Yeah.
And it's not porn style. It's not designed to titillate. And to me, it reminds me of the murder scene in Larry Clark's Bully.
Oh yeah.
Which too it's messy, like you say. It's awkward, like you say. And it's just kind of unpleasant. It's got that feeling of queasiness about it. You feel as drugged and as messed up and as intoxicated as they are, and you can almost sense this sort of impending shame. Like when they all wake up the next day and are quite like, oh my god, what have we done? It's that sequence is arguably the closest feeling of a post one night stand beer fear ever captured on film.
Yeah, absolutely right. Tangent, in that I do think it has a lot of in common with Rocky Horror Show, and you're naive visitors to an avant-garde abode who experience a carnal awakening where the sexually ambiguous host seduces them before revealing themselves to be aliens/mutants. It's got a weird sort of relationship with that.
Yeah, that's a very good call. And of course, unlike in the Rocky Horror Show, the weird mutants in here, they all start bursting.
Yeah.
So you've got these ridiculously squirty, splattery effects. What I do think we need to touch on is Richard Hillman, because this performance,
it's unbelievable.
It is bravura, but I can see why people would say it's off-putting. This is the barometer of which if you can't accept his acting and how over the top and abrasive it is, you are going to hate every goddamn second of this film. But my God, how he plays drunk and drugged up is amazing.
Met people like that. You've met people like that.
Completely.
Just the realism of it. It's amazing.
But heartbreaking at the same time, because Hillman, of course, he died of drugs and booze killed him. Basically, he contracted HIV from sharing a needle. Horrible rumours kicking about that he'd been abused by his father. It's a lot of similarities there with Brad Renfro from Bully as well. And another lad who was in Kids as well by Larry Clark. He seems to be able to capture the rawness and heartbreak of these troubled souls on camera really well, and it's both mesmeric and horrifying.
Without doubt. Really great score as well from Zoe Polidorus, daughter of Basil Polidorus. She didn't do many scores, but this one I thought really fit with the film. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky film to recommend, isn't it? I mean, it's one of the 5 films. It's the Marmite of the bunch.
I think it says a lot that Stan Winston's name is absent from the credits. I can only imagine that he was completely and utterly horrified by how on the nose and how confrontational and aggressive this film is. But if you like pull no punches, take no prisoners horror filmmaking, I think Teenage Caveman is spectacular. And if you love the films of Larry Clark, it is a joy to see him sort of mine his vision within a horror and fantasy and sci-fi framework.
You're listening to Natural Selection, the home of the DTV Creature Feature.
There's something out there. I saw it.
Where?
In the trees.
I don't see anything.
There.
A boy's imagination can hide many things.
Are you different? I can't tell you.
A dark past.
Who are the others?
Do anything.
An evil presence.
You don't know what's going on?
Then explain it to me.
And even an alien force. But just because it hasn't happened...
Found that stuck in the bathroom stall.
What is it?
Looks like some kind of claw.
doesn't mean it won't. Just because you can't see it.
Ben said that he saw something out there in the woods.
Doesn't mean it's not there.
It's a monster. It's not from here.
And just because it isn't real doesn't mean it can't kill you.
He created something to kill for him.
Tell her, that creature is you.
Randy Quaid,
What happened to Ben when his mother died?
Natasha Kinski,
Ben's not normal, Dr. Stillman. You said it yourself.
The Day the World Ended.
Trailer there for The Day the World Ended, which was directed by Terry Gross. Thoughts?
Well, this is a very, very interesting in the sense that this is the only one of the 5 that didn't premiere on Cinemax.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you look at all the others, you had She Creature played on Cinemax Tuesday the 4th of October 2001, which, as a side note, was 2.5 weeks after Samuel Z. Arkoff passed away at the age of 83. How to Make a Monster, it played the week after on Thursday the 11th of October. Earth vs. the Spider, Thursday the 18th of October. And Teenage Caveman, Thursday the 25th of October. There was about a 4-week pause after Teenage Caveman, and The Day the World Ended premiered on HBO on Friday the 23rd of November 2001. From what I gather, it was going to be the one that... it was meant to be the sort of the big one that saw them get a second series commissioned, and instead of playing on Cinemax, it was going to be played on the more quote-unquote prestigious HBO.
Yeah, so where does this sit with you? I mean, for me, I've got to rank She Creature, Caveman, Monster, maybe this, and this feels to be a low 4th. I mean, it doesn't feel deserving of a 4th place, shall I say. It feels like it should be higher, but I think because of the quality of those 3, I think it has to sit in 4th place. It's
got more going for it than Earth vs. the Spider, but I still had a hard time with it.
What did you?
It's this and Earth vs. the Spider are the 2 creature features in terms of its brand name anyway that I come back to the least. There is a lot to like about it though. It's not badly made by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
You know, there's a strange, creepy quality to the movie. I don't want to say that the film is overtly serious. You know, some of the side characters, stroke townsfolk, are really quite broadly drawn. But it's not as day-glowy, cartoonish as How to Make a Monster or Earth vs. the Spider. But it's not real, though, either. There's a real surreal streak to the film, which I like. Natasha Kinski, she sort of plays the straight woman who is our sort of lead-in through all this weird small town stuff, and it all sort of swirls around her, and yeah, it's okay. I guess it's got what you'd sort of term now a Stranger Things type vibe.
Yeah, I suppose so. I just found it very straight. I mean, to me, it had a lot of similarities with that classic Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life, which aired in the 2nd season. I think it's considered one of the best sort of Twilight Zone episodes, with the kid who can pretty much control most of the small town and the monster itself. I mean, Joe Dante remade that for Twilight Zone the movie, but I think he changed the character of a kid into like a 20-something person.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that movie.
Yeah. But yeah, to me, it had a lot of relationship with that, but it just felt like a bit of an X-Files episode.
Yeah, it's
which
definitely...
again sounds like a really sort of damning indictment of the whole thing, and it's not. It's a little bit bland. It's a little bit unexciting. It's a little bit. I mean, the small town is great. There are small towns and there are small towns, and this is a small town. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of Kinski's character, Dr. Jennifer Stillman, the child psychologist coming from out of town, and finding herself in this strange environment. I thought the kid was absolutely perfect. I thought he was amazing.
Yeah, very good.
Really, long history. The kid is played by Bobby Edner. Long history with kids TV, kids adverts and stuff like that. I think he went on to be in a boy band, I think, a couple of years after this, where he achieved a modicum of success. But yeah, and there are other little things about it that I like the way they show clips of the original movie on the TV. Nods like that I do like, but aside from that, it doesn't really.
It's just. It's like a creature from the id that this kid has conjured, and it's sort of just menacing the townsfolk. The townsfolk, they have this secret in that it turns out that what they killed and the kid's mum, and you never really know if this kid's been born of alien interference, which is what's hinted at. I think the problem is that Gross is lumped with quite a shoddy script that never answers the questions that it puts forward.
Yeah, I mean, you had Brian King behind the story, who wrote the great Cypher and Haunter for Vincenzo Natale, but you also had Max Ensko and Annie DeYoung, who of course wrote Earth vs. the Spider. And I think there's a little bleed into this of that same mundanity and the same kind of... But having said that, well, again, it's a kind of cliche aspect to it as well, like the small town, the outcast kid, the outsider from another place, and also the fact that no one should really have to see Stephen Tobolowsky having sex, because that's just crossing the boundaries of good taste, in all honesty. And also, I think I really, really like the original. I mean, out of all the Sam Arkoff originals, this is the one that I did find I enjoyed the most. Maybe it's because it's a Roger Corman film. I think it was his fourth film that he made back in 1955. I just love it. Richard Denning is in it, Laurie Nelson. It's a very different story where it's sort of a post-nuclear apocalypse with an unlikely bunch of survivors who are trapped in a protected valley with the nuclear fallout around the perimeter. Yeah, I am very, very fond of that. And like I said, I think it's the best of the original Arkoff 5. Funnily enough, this Terry Gross film from 2001, it isn't the first time it's been remade. It was actually remade in the 60s under the title In the Year 2889, almost verbatim, which was a bit weird, line for line. Terrible film. So yeah, this is the second remake of that.
There is stuff that I do like about it. I think Gross has a good handle on mood. It's very, very well shot. He has a great visual sensibility.
Yeah.
It's the plotting. But the creature is kind of cool.
Yeah.
My frustration is that it's hidden for a lot of it and shot very, very dark, save for like a tentacle here and there, an eye every now and again. But there's a wonderful sequence set in it, of all places, a public bathroom. And this toilet attack on the Ben character, the young kid.
Brilliant.
And so, it's got such a weird, creepy double meaning to it when this tentacle's slithering over the cubicle and he's going, Dad? Well, this awful phallic tentacle slithering around. It's like some weird paedophile glory hole nightmare. It's very inappropriate, you know, having a kid at the centre of what Cthulhu goes cottaging.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do think that the creature, the design of it, when you finally see it, it's designed by Scott Stoddard, and it's like a cross between Predator and the toothsome aliens within the Deadly Spawn.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the movement of it is very cool as well. The creature performer was a guy called Brian Steele, who was a fairly well decorated creature performer, standing at a whopping 6'7". He began as Frankenstein's monster at Universal Studios theme park. And then he'd go on to play the eponymous Bigfoot in Harry and the Hendersons.
Right.
In 23 episodes of that. And my personal favourite, he was actually the guy who brought the Cthulhu to life in Peter Hyams's The Relic, which incidentally suffers from the same problem as the Day the World Ended, in that the Cthulhu is also shot far too dark. But yeah, Steele got other creature work in the can. Underworld, The Cave, Terminator Salvation, Predators, and most recently the Lost in Space revival for Netflix. So yeah, quite an accomplished monster guy.
Very cool. So I think you wrote on Twitter a couple of weeks back that these films are deserving of a Scream Factory box set Blu-ray release, and they are, aren't they? You know, together, individual, together.
I'd love to see them in a box. I think that they are. You can watch She Creature, Teenage Caveman, and How to Make a Monster on their own. Yeah. But I think they're worthwhile watching as a continuum. It certainly helps First for Spider. That makes it a lot more palatable. But if you do that, when it comes to The Day the World Ended, to have this as the one that they tried to use to get a second series, you know, and obviously there'll be other factors. The fact that it probably didn't pull in decent ratings, the rental figures probably weren't that great, the toys tanked. But yeah, it's a shame they chose to end with this one. They should just lumped it in the middle and then saved a real banger for the ending, especially as Teenage Caveman was the last one to be filmed. Yeah. But obviously, I can't imagine them using that as leverage with HBO to give them a second series, especially when Stan Winston's not got his name on it. But no, I think for people who, you know, we fetishise Tales from the Crypt, Masters of Horror. Yeah, I think this is a little mini series of interconnected. Creature features. Yeah, I think it'd work together. Watch it, you know, binging them all at once.
As it stands, I think you can purchase a lot of these on Prime Video to stream. They're not the most inexpensive of things. They're about $5.99, $6.99 to own. Or if you want physical media copies of them on DVD, you can purchase 4 out of 5 for less than £2 or £3. But She Creature is going for a premium. That's about £8 or £9, isn't it?
I think back a couple of years ago, I can recall Bloody Disgusting writing something about She Creature. And ever since then, DVD prices of it, second-hand, out of print, seem to have spiked somewhat. Yeah. You know, you're looking to pay about 3 times as much for that.
It's a shame, but it's a film that really deserves seeking out. Okay, well done. Another episode in the can. Thank you for listening. Please go out and share our podcast with some friends on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, everywhere like that. And if you can, leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help promote and make our podcast a little bit more prominent in the swamp, whichever you choose, of recordings. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. You can follow us on Twitter as well if you're so inclined. I'm at The Dave Wayne.
I am at Matty Budrevich.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out the Schlock and Awe page on Instagram, while you're welcome to stalk Matty and Dave on Twitter. See you next time on Natural Selection.